I'm 80 years old now. When I look in the mirror, I see wrinkles that weren't there before. I see gray hair that tells stories of decades gone by. I see eyes that have cried, laughed, loved, and lost more times than I can count. At this age, people think the hardest part is the aching knees. Some think it's the medications lined up on the kitchen counter. Others think it's watching your body become slower than your mind. But after 80 years of living, I can tell you something that hurts far more than any physical pain. It's discovering that not everyone around you deserves a place in your life. Not even family, especially in old age. I know that sounds harsh. When I was younger, I believed family was everything. I believed blood relationships guaranteed loyalty. I believed the people who shared my name would always stand beside me. I was wrong. Life has a way of teaching lessons that no school ever can, and some of those lessons arrive when your hair has already turned white. Many years ago, I met an old man sitting alone in a park. He looked to be in his late 70s. Every afternoon, he sat on the same bench feeding birds. One day, I decided to sit beside him. We talked for hours. He spoke softly, but every word carried the weight of experience. At one point, he said something I never forgot. He looked at me and said, "The older you get, the more valuable your peace becomes." At the time, I nodded politely. But I didn't fully understand. Now I do. At 80 years old, I understand perfectly, because peace becomes your greatest treasure. You no longer have endless years ahead. You no longer have energy to waste on drama, conflict manipulation, and emotional battles. Every day becomes precious. Every moment matters. And the people you allow into your life can either protect that peace or destroy it. That is why today I want to talk about the first person you must avoid in old age. This person may be a relative, a child, a sibling, a cousin, a lifelong friend, or even a spouse. The relationship doesn't matter. The behavior does. The first person you must avoid is the constant critic. You know exactly who I'm talking about. No matter what you do, it's never enough. No matter what happens, they find something wrong. You share good news. They find a problem. You tell them about a happy memory. They remind you of a mistake. You try to enjoy life. They make you feel guilty. I once knew a woman named Margaret. She was 82 years old, a beautiful soul, kind-hearted, generous, the type of person who remembered everyone's birthday. She had spent her entire life caring for others. But there was one person who made her final years miserable. Her own daughter. Every phone call ended the same way. Criticism, complaints, judgment. If Margaret bought a new sweater, her daughter said she wasted money. If Margaret stayed home, her daughter called her lazy. If Margaret went out with friends, her daughter accused her of being irresponsible. Nothing Margaret did was ever right. One afternoon, I asked her why she continued taking those calls. Her answer broke my heart. She said, "Because she's my daughter." As if being family gave someone permission to wound her repeatedly. It doesn't. Let me tell you something important. Growing old does not mean accepting disrespect. Being a parent does not mean becoming someone's emotional punching bag. Sharing DNA does not give anyone the right to steal your happiness. At 80 years old, your heart deserves kindness. Your mind deserves peace. Your remaining years deserve joy, not endless criticism. The truth is, constant critics often reveal more about themselves than about you. Many carry their own unhappiness, their own regrets, their own insecurities. And instead of healing themselves, they project their pain onto others. Unfortunately, older people often become easy targets. Why? Because many seniors fear loneliness. They fear losing family connections. They fear speaking up, so they tolerate treatment they would never accept from strangers. But imagine something for a moment. Imagine you have only $100 left. Would you hand it out carelessly to everyone you meet? Of course not. You would protect it. You would spend it wisely. Now think about time. At 80, time is far more valuable than money. Every day is precious. Every month matters. Every year is a gift. Why spend that gift listening to someone who constantly makes you feel small? Why allow criticism to steal moments that could be filled with laughter? I learned this lesson after losing my wife. We were married for over 50 years. When she passed away, I suddenly understood how short life truly is. The arguments that once seemed important became meaningless. The worries that kept me awake disappeared. Only love mattered. Only peace mattered. Only meaningful relationships mattered. Everything else faded away. That experience changed me. I became more careful about who I allowed into my emotional world. Not because I became cold, not because I stopped caring, but because I finally understood that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's necessary, especially in old age. You see, many older people spend decades sacrificing for others. They raise children, support spouses, help relatives, work hard, give endlessly. Then, when they finally reach a season where they deserve rest, some people continue taking from them. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. The constant critic is one of those people. They drain energy. They create anxiety. They turn simple conversations into painful experiences. And over time, their negativity can become a heavy burden. A burden no elderly person should carry. I remember another gentleman I met at a retirement center. His name was Walter. At 84 years old, he had survived war, economic hardship, health problems, and countless challenges. Yet the thing that hurt him most wasn't any of those experiences. It was his brother's constant criticism. Every family gathering left him feeling exhausted. Every conversation became an opportunity for judgment. One day, Walter finally did something courageous. He created distance. Not hatred, not revenge. Distance. He stopped attending gatherings that damaged his mental health. He limited conversations. He focused on relationships that brought peace. And something remarkable happened. He smiled more. He slept better. He laughed again. For the first time in years, he felt free. That is the power of protecting your peace. Old age should not be a prison sentence. It should be a season of wisdom, a season of reflection, a season of enjoying the life you've spent decades building. But that becomes impossible when criticism fills every corner of your world. So if you're listening today, I want you to ask yourself one question. Who constantly makes you feel worse after every interaction? Who leaves you emotionally exhausted? Who always finds fault in your choices, your lifestyle, your happiness? And most importantly, why are they still holding so much space in your life? Sometimes the bravest thing an older person can do is create healthy boundaries. Not because they stopped loving someone, but because they finally started loving themselves. And trust me, at 80 years old, that lesson may save your peace, your health, and your happiness. Because life is too short to spend your final chapters apologizing for being yourself. And this is only the first person you must avoid. The next one may be even more dangerous. Because unlike the critic, they don't attack openly. They smile. They pretend to care. And yet they slowly drain everything from you, including your dignity. By the time you reach 80 years old, you begin to see people differently, not because your eyesight gets better, but because your life experience does. You start noticing patterns. You recognize behaviors you once ignored. You understand motives that used to confuse you. And perhaps most importantly, you finally see who truly cares about you and who only cares about what they can get from you. The second person you must avoid in old age is the taker. The person who always needs something. The person who calls when they want help, but disappears when you need support. The person who sees your kindness as a resource to use rather than a gift to appreciate. Unfortunately, these people can be found everywhere. Sometimes they are friends, sometimes neighbors, sometimes family, and sometimes they are the very people you sacrificed your life to help. That reality can be painful. I know because I've seen it happen. Several years ago, I met an 81-year-old man named Robert. Robert had worked hard his entire life. He spent over 40 years as a mechanic. His hands were rough. His back hurt every morning. But he was proud of the life he built. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't famous. But he was a good man. the kind of man who would stop what he was doing to help someone in need. When his children were young, he worked extra shifts to make sure they never went hungry. He skipped vacations so they could attend college. He sacrificed dreams so they could chase theirs, and he never complained, not once. After his wife passed away, Robert hoped his children would stay close, not because he wanted money, not because he wanted favors. He simply wanted connection, conversation, love, time. But something heartbreaking happened. His phone only rang when someone needed something. One child needed help paying bills. Another needed a loan. A third needed assistance fixing a problem. Yet weeks and sometimes months passed without anyone calling just to ask, "Dad, how are you doing today?" Think about that. Imagine spending decades giving everything you have, then realizing that some people only remember you when they need something. That realization can break a person's heart. One afternoon, Robert said something I'll never forget. He looked down at his coffee cup and quietly said, "I feel like an ATM with feelings." Those words stayed with me, because so many older people know exactly what that feels like. The taker rarely announces themselves. They don't walk into your life wearing a sign. Instead, they often appear caring, friendly, affectionate. But over time, a pattern emerges. Everything revolves around their needs, their problems, their emergencies, their requests. And somehow, your needs always come last. Or worse, they don't matter at all. You may notice that every conversation turns into a favor. Every visit has an agenda. Every interaction leaves you emotionally drained. The relationship becomes one-sided. And one-sided relationships become exhausting, especially in old age. When you're younger, you may have enough energy to carry other people's burdens. At 80, every ounce of emotional energy becomes valuable. Every moment matters. Every peaceful day is precious. That is why you must learn to recognize the taker, because they don't just take money, they take time, they take energy, they take emotional strength, and sometimes they take your dignity. I remember a woman named Helen. She was 83 years old and lived alone after losing her husband. She had a grandson she loved deeply. At first, he visited often. He hugged her, complimented her, made her feel special. Helen was thrilled, but eventually she noticed something. Every visit ended with a request: money for rent, money for a car payment, money for groceries, money for another emergency. She wanted to believe he genuinely cared, so she kept giving, again and again, month after month, year after year, until one day she realized something devastating. When she stopped giving money, the visits stopped too. The phone calls disappeared. The affection vanished. The attention she thought was love had actually been dependence. That discovery shattered her heart. Not because she lost money, because she lost an illusion. She realized she had been valued for what she could provide rather than who she was. No elderly person deserves that. No human being deserves that. Real love is not conditional. Real relationships are not transactions. Real family does not keep score. And yet many older adults spend their final years surrounded by people who constantly take while rarely giving anything back. Now let me be clear. Helping family is not wrong. Supporting loved ones is not wrong. Generosity is a beautiful thing. In fact, some of the happiest people I've ever known were incredibly generous. The problem isn't giving. The problem is being used. There is a difference, a huge difference. Healthy relationships involve mutual care. Both people matter. Both people are valued. Both people contribute in their own way. Maybe one person provides financial help. Maybe the other provides companionship. Maybe one offers wisdom. Maybe the other offers assistance. But there is balance, respect, gratitude. The taker destroys that balance. They expect without appreciating. They receive without reciprocating. They consume without considering the cost. And eventually, they leave you feeling empty. One of the greatest lessons age teaches us is that saying, "no," is sometimes an act of wisdom. When I was younger, I struggled with that word. No felt selfish. No felt rude. No felt uncomfortable. But at 80, I've learned something powerful. Every time you say yes to something harmful, you say no to your own peace, and your peace matters. It matters more than pleasing people. It matters more than avoiding conflict. It matters more than maintaining unhealthy relationships. You earned that peace through decades of hard work, sacrifice, heartbreak, and perseverance. Protect it, guard it, value it, because nobody else will do that for you. I once asked a 90-year-old woman what the secret to a happy old age was. She smiled. Then she said something simple but profound. Stop trying to save people who are drowning by choice. I thought about those words for a long time. Many takers create the same problems repeatedly, the same emergencies, the same crises, the same dramas, and they expect others to rescue them over and over again. Meanwhile, the rescuer becomes exhausted, financially drained, emotionally depleted, spiritually tired. That isn't compassion, that's a trap many seniors fall into because their hearts are good, because they love deeply, because they want to help. But good hearts still need boundaries. In fact, good hearts need boundaries the most. Without boundaries, kindness becomes exploitation. Without boundaries, generosity becomes manipulation. Without boundaries, love becomes exhaustion. At 80 years old, you don't need people who constantly take from you. You need people who appreciate you, respect you, value your presence, cherish your time. The people who call just to hear your voice. The people who ask how you're feeling. The people who sit beside you without needing anything. The people who remind you that your worth is not tied to what you can provide. It's tied to who you are. And who you are is enough. As I sit here reflecting on 80 years of life, I realize something important. The richest people are not those with the most money. They're the ones surrounded by genuine relationships. Relationships built on respect, trust, love, and mutual care. Those relationships nourish the soul. The taker does the opposite. They slowly drain it. And that's why they are the second person you must avoid in old age. Because your remaining years deserve more than being someone's resource. They deserve being someone's treasure. But there is another person who can be even more dangerous. Unlike the critic and unlike the taker, this person doesn't drain your wallet. They drain your spirit. They spread fear, negativity, and misery wherever they go. And if you allow them too close, they can turn even your happiest days into darkness. When you're young, you believe you have all the time in the world. A bad day doesn't seem so important. A difficult conversation feels temporary. A negative person is simply someone you tolerate and move on from. But something changes when you reach 80. You begin to understand that life is not measured in years. It is measured in moments. Moments with people you love. Moments of laughter. Moments of peace. Moments that make you grateful to still be here. And because those moments become so precious, you can no longer afford to spend them around people who poison every room they enter. The third person you must avoid in old age is the negative soul. You know the type. No matter how beautiful the day is, they find a cloud. No matter how much good happens, they focus on the bad. No matter how many blessings surround them, they only talk about problems. They complain constantly, criticize endlessly, worry about everything. And eventually, their darkness begins affecting everyone around them, including you. I learned this lesson from a man named George. George was 83 years old when I met him. A retired teacher, a thoughtful man. He loved reading books and spending mornings walking through the park. Yet every afternoon he visited the same neighbor, and every evening he returned home exhausted. One day I asked him why. He laughed softly and said, "I don't walk away from those conversations feeling older. I walk away feeling heavier." His neighbor spent every visit talking about everything that was wrong. The economy was terrible. People were terrible. The future was terrible. The weather was terrible. Life was terrible. Every topic became another reason to be miserable. At first George felt sympathy, then concern, then obligation. But eventually he realized something important. You cannot spend years carrying someone else's negativity without it affecting your own spirit. Think about that for a moment. Imagine walking into a room filled with smoke every day. Even if you don't light the fire, eventually the smoke reaches your lungs. Negativity works the same way. If you hear enough fear, you become fearful. If you hear enough anger, you become angry. If you hear enough hopelessness, you begin losing hope yourself. That is why protecting your emotional environment becomes essential in old age. At 80, peace is not a luxury. It is a necessity. I remember a woman named Evelyn. She had survived things most people couldn't imagine. The loss of a child, the death of her husband, serious health challenges, financial hardship. Yet somehow she remained joyful, not because her life had been easy, but because she carefully protected what entered her mind. One afternoon she shared a secret with me. She said, "I stopped attending pity parties years ago." I smiled and asked what she meant. She explained that some people gather not to solve problems, but to celebrate misery. They complain together, gossip together, spread fear together, and leave feeling worse than before. Evelyn simply stopped participating. She chose gratitude instead. She chose hope instead. She chose peace instead, and it transformed her final years. Now don't misunderstand me. Life is difficult. Everyone needs support. Everyone has bad days. Everyone needs someone to listen. That isn't negativity. That's being human. The negative soul is different. They don't seek solutions. They feed on problems. They don't want encouragement. They reject it. They don't want light. They prefer darkness. And they invite everyone around them to join them there. Many older adults unknowingly spend years trapped in these relationships, especially when the person is family. Maybe it's a sibling who calls every day only to complain. Maybe it's an adult child consumed by bitterness. Maybe it's a lifelong friend who has become permanently angry at the world. You stay because of history. You stay because of loyalty. You stay because of guilt. But slowly, little by little, your own happiness begins disappearing. I once met a 90-year-old widow named Carol. Carol loved gardening. Her flowers were famous throughout the neighborhood. People often stopped just to admire her yard. Yet every Sunday, her sister visited, and every Sunday Carol's smile vanished. Her sister complained about politics, complained about family, complained about neighbors, complained about health, complained about life itself. The visits lasted only 2 hours. But Carol spent the next 2 days recovering emotionally. One day she finally made a difficult decision. She shortened the visits. Then she shortened them even more. Eventually she created healthy boundaries. Something surprising happened. The flowers seemed brighter. Her laughter returned. Her energy improved. Her joy came back. Not because her life changed, because her environment changed. The people around us influence us more than we realize. At 80 years old, that influence becomes even more important, because your emotional energy is no longer unlimited. You cannot afford to waste it on constant negativity. Every day matters too much. I think about my own life. Over 8 decades, I have experienced heartbreak. I've attended funerals. I've watched dreams disappear. I've faced disappointments that once felt unbearable. Yet when I look back, I don't remember every problem. I remember people. The people who helped me smile. The people who encouraged me. The people who reminded me that life was still beautiful. Those are the people who made the difference, not the ones who constantly focused on darkness. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself in old age is permission to choose your company carefully. You don't need to apologize for protecting your peace. You don't need to feel guilty for stepping away from negativity. You don't need to sacrifice your happiness to accommodate someone else's misery. That may sound selfish. It isn't. It's wisdom. A wisdom that often takes decades to learn. There is an old saying that I didn't fully understand when I was young. It says that some people bring happiness wherever they go. Others bring happiness whenever they go. At 80, you finally understand exactly what that means. Some people leave you feeling lighter. Others leave you feeling drained. Some people inspire gratitude. Others create anxiety. Some people remind you that life is a gift. Others make life feel like a burden. Choose carefully, because the people closest to you often shape the quality of your remaining years. I remember sitting with an elderly veteran named Frank shortly before his 89th birthday. He had survived war. He had buried friends. He had endured hardships that would break many people. Yet he remained remarkably positive. I asked him how. His answer was simple. I stopped feeding my mind with poison. Those words stayed with me. Negative people are emotional poison. Not because they are evil, not because they are bad, but because constant negativity slowly changes the way you see the world. And at 80 years old, you deserve to see beauty. You deserve to notice the sunrise, to enjoy a grandchild's laugh, to appreciate a warm cup of coffee, to feel grateful for another morning. You deserve hope, not hopelessness, joy, not misery, peace, not endless fear. That is why the negative soul is the third person you must avoid, because they don't just steal your time, they steal your joy. And joy becomes priceless in old age. But there is someone even more dangerous waiting ahead. Someone who smiles to your face, agrees with everything you say, pretends to support you, yet behind your back, they quietly damage your reputation, your confidence, and your relationships. The fourth person is not openly negative. They are something far more difficult to recognize. A betrayer disguised as a friend. By the time you reach 80 years old, you have learned many lessons about people. You learn that not everyone who smiles at you likes you. Not everyone who praises you respects you. And not everyone who calls themselves your friend actually wants the best for you. Some of the deepest wounds in life do not come from enemies. They come from people you trusted, people you welcomed into your home, people whose secrets you protected, people whose tears you wiped away, people you believed would never hurt you. The fourth person you must avoid in old age is the betrayer disguised as a friend. This person is difficult to recognize. That is what makes them dangerous. Unlike the critic, they do not attack openly. Unlike the taker, they do not constantly ask for favors. Unlike the negative soul, they do not complain all the time. Instead, they appear kind, supportive, interested, loyal. But behind your back, a different story unfolds. They gossip. They twist your words. They share your private struggles. They quietly damage your reputation. And often, you don't discover the truth until the damage is already done. I learned this lesson through a woman named Dorothy. Dorothy was 84 years old. She lived in a small community where everyone knew each other. For years, she believed she had a close friend named Nancy. The two women spent countless afternoons together. They drank tea, shared memories, talked about family, talked about life. Dorothy trusted Nancy completely. If something troubled her, Nancy was the first person she called. If something wonderful happened, Nancy was the first person she told. That trust lasted nearly 20 years. Then one day, everything changed. Dorothy attended a community gathering. Several people acted strangely toward her. Conversations became awkward. Smiles disappeared. Whispers followed her across the room. At first she couldn't understand why. Eventually, a neighbor gently pulled her aside. What Dorothy learned that day shattered her heart. The private conversations she had shared with Nancy had been repeated all over town. Her fears, her family struggles, her health concerns, even personal memories she had shared in confidence. Everything had become gossip. Everything. When Dorothy told me the story, tears filled her eyes. Not because people knew her secrets, because the person she trusted most had betrayed her trust. That kind of pain cuts deeply, especially in old age, because trust becomes more valuable with each passing year. At 20, you can recover from betrayal and build new friendships. At 80, genuine trust is precious. You don't hand it out easily, and when it is broken, the wound can linger. I remember asking Dorothy what hurt the most. She thought for a moment. Then she said something profound. It wasn't losing a friend. It was realizing I never had one. Those words carry a painful truth. Some people enjoy access to your life without truly caring about your well-being. They collect your stories, your vulnerabilities, your struggles. Then they use them for entertainment, attention, or personal advantage. Sadly, these people exist in every stage of life, but they can become especially dangerous in old age. Why? Because many seniors become more trusting. Loneliness can make companionship feel precious. The desire for connection can sometimes make us overlook warning signs. We want to believe the best about people, and often that kindness is beautiful. But kindness without wisdom can leave us vulnerable. I once knew a retired firefighter named Thomas. He was 86 years old, strong, respected, well liked by everyone. Yet he carried a painful regret. Years earlier, he had trusted a friend with personal financial information. The friend seemed concerned about helping him, asked questions, offered advice, acted supportive. But later, Thomas discovered that information had spread throughout their social circle. People were discussing matters that should have remained private. His dignity had been compromised. His trust had been violated. And all because he shared too much with the wrong person. That experience taught him an important lesson. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Think about that carefully. Your thoughts are valuable. Your experiences are valuable. Your struggles are valuable. Not everyone earns the right to know them. Trust should be given slowly, especially in your later years. One of the wisest men I ever met once told me, "Watch how people talk about others when they're not present." At first, I didn't fully understand. Then I noticed something. People who constantly gossip about others will eventually gossip about you. People who betray one person's trust will often betray another's. Character leaves clues. The betrayer reveals themselves if you pay attention. Maybe they share private information that isn't theirs to share. Maybe they enjoy stirring conflict. Maybe they seem unusually interested in other people's personal business. Maybe they always have another person's secret to tell. These are warning signs, and they should never be ignored. At 80 years old, peace matters too much to allow betrayal into your life. You deserve relationships built on honesty, respect, confidentiality, trust, not manipulation, not gossip, not hidden agendas. I think one of the greatest blessings of aging is clarity. You begin seeing people more accurately. You stop being impressed by charm alone. You stop confusing friendliness with loyalty. You stop mistaking attention for genuine care. Instead, you pay attention to actions. Because actions reveal character, always. The people worth keeping close are not necessarily the loudest. They are not necessarily the most entertaining. They are not necessarily the most popular. They are the people who protect your dignity when you are absent. The people who defend you when you are criticized. The people who keep your confidence safe. The people who celebrate your successes without jealousy. The people who remain loyal when there is nothing to gain. Those people are treasures. And treasures become more valuable with age. I remember an 88-year-old widow named Louise. When asked about her happiest years, she gave an unexpected answer. She didn't mention youth. She didn't mention wealth. She didn't mention success. She said her happiest years began when she stopped chasing large circles of friends and focused on a few trustworthy relationships. Quality over quantity, trust over popularity, peace over drama, wisdom over appearances. Those choices transformed her life. Perhaps they can transform yours too, because as you grow older, your social circle naturally becomes smaller. And that's not a tragedy. It's often a blessing. You begin removing people who bring chaos. You begin valuing authenticity. You begin recognizing who truly belongs in your life. The betrayer disguised as a friend does not belong there. Not because you hate them. Not because you seek revenge. But because trust is sacred. And people who repeatedly violate it should not be given unlimited access to your heart. At 80 years old, you have earned the right to surround yourself with people who make life better. People who make you feel safe. people who make you feel respected, people who make you feel valued. Protect that privilege, protect that peace, protect that trust. Because the years ahead are too precious to spend worrying about who might be talking behind your back. And yet, as painful as betrayal can be, there is one final person who may be even more dangerous. This person doesn't criticize you. They don't take from you. They don't spread negativity. And they don't gossip. Instead, they do something far worse. They make you feel guilty for living your own life. They manipulate your emotions, control your decisions, and convince you that your happiness should always come last. Sometimes they are strangers. Sometimes they are friends. And sometimes they are family. If there is one lesson that took me almost 80 years to learn, it is this: not everyone who says they love you truly respects you. That may sound surprising. After all, love and respect seem like they should go together. But they don't always. Some people claim to love you while constantly controlling you. Some people claim to care about you while making you feel guilty every time you choose yourself. Some people claim to support you while quietly manipulating every decision you make. And that brings us to the fifth and perhaps most dangerous person you must avoid in old age: the master of guilt, the emotional manipulator, the person who makes you feel responsible for their happiness while slowly destroying your own. This person rarely uses force. They don't need to. Their weapon is guilt, and guilt can be incredibly powerful, especially for older people, because many seniors grew up in a generation that valued sacrifice, duty, responsibility, putting others first. Those values are admirable, but manipulative people know exactly how to exploit them. I remember a woman named Ruth. She was 87 years old, a loving mother, a devoted wife, a generous friend. Throughout her life, she had always put others before herself, her children, her husband, her community. Everyone came first. She believed that was what good people did. Then her husband passed away. For the first time in decades, Ruth began thinking about herself. Not in a selfish way, simply in a healthy way. She joined a senior travel group, started attending social events, made new friends, discovered hobbies she had never had time for. For a brief period, she felt alive again, excited again, hopeful again. Then the guilt began. One of her adult children constantly questioned her choices. Why are you spending money on trips? Shouldn't you be helping the family instead? Don't you think you're too old for all this? Why are you always going somewhere? Slowly, those comments chipped away at her happiness. She began canceling outings, declining invitations, staying home, not because she wanted to, because she felt guilty. One afternoon, Ruth looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I spent my whole life taking care of everyone else. Why do I feel bad for finally enjoying my own life?" That question broke my heart, because so many older adults ask themselves the same thing. Why do they feel guilty for resting? Why do they feel guilty for having boundaries? Why do they feel guilty for saying no? Why do they feel guilty for pursuing happiness? The answer is often simple. Someone taught them to. Manipulative people thrive on guilt. They know that guilt creates control. If they can make you feel selfish, they can influence your choices. If they can make you feel responsible for their emotions, they can direct your behavior. If they can make you doubt yourself, they gain power over your life. And at 80 years old, nobody deserves that burden. I once met an 85-year-old veteran named Harold. Harold spent decades serving others, his country, his community, yet he constantly felt trapped by one relationship. Every time he tried to make a decision for himself, a relative would respond with disappointment, not anger, not arguments, disappointment. And that disappointment became a form of control. If Harold wanted to travel, they acted hurt. If Harold wanted privacy, they acted offended. If Harold wanted independence, they acted abandoned. Eventually, he stopped doing things that made him happy. Not because he changed his mind, because he wanted to avoid making someone else unhappy. That is not love. Love does not require the destruction of your own well-being. Love does not demand constant sacrifice. Love does not punish happiness. Healthy relationships celebrate your joy. Manipulative relationships resent it. That distinction matters, especially in old age. You have already spent decades carrying responsibilities. You have worked, sacrificed, given, endured, supported, helped, served. How many more years should you spend apologizing for wanting peace? How many more years should you spend seeking permission to enjoy your own life? The answer is simple. None. I remember a 90-year-old woman named Gloria. She possessed a wisdom that could fill libraries. One day I asked her what she regretted most. I expected her to mention missed opportunities, lost money, past mistakes. Instead, she said something unexpected. I regret the years I spent living for other people's approval. Then she smiled. And I regret them less now because I finally stopped. Those words carry incredible power. Many people reach old age still trapped inside expectations created by others. Family expectations, social expectations, community expectations. But eventually, wisdom asks an important question. Whose life are you living? Yours or someone else's? Because one day, every one of us reaches the end of our journey. And when that day comes, we won't be thinking about whether everyone approved of our choices. We'll think about whether we truly lived, whether we laughed enough, loved enough, experienced enough, enjoyed enough, whether we honored the gift of life we were given. The emotional manipulator steals that opportunity. Not with chains, not with threats, but with guilt. And guilt can become a prison whose door is often unlocked. The moment you realize you don't need permission to protect your peace, the moment you realize your happiness matters too, the moment you realize boundaries are healthy, that prison door opens, and freedom begins. As I sit here reflecting on 80 years of life, I have come to understand something beautiful. The final chapters of life are not meant to be lived in fear. They are not meant to be spent pleasing everyone. They are not meant to be sacrificed to people who drain your spirit. They are meant to be cherished, protected, enjoyed, celebrated. The remaining years are a gift, no matter how many or how few, and gifts should not be wasted. That is why you must avoid these 5 people. The constant critic who makes you feel small. The taker who only remembers you when they need something. The negative soul who steals your joy. The betrayer disguised as a friend, and the master of guilt who manipulates your heart. Avoiding them doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean becoming bitter. It doesn't mean you stop loving people. It simply means you begin loving yourself enough to choose peace. Because peace is priceless. And at 80 years old, peace may be the greatest treasure you have left. One day, all of us will leave this world. Our possessions will stay behind. Our titles will fade. Our accomplishments will become memories. But the way we lived will remain. The love we shared, the kindness we showed, the peace we protected, those things matter. So protect your heart, protect your joy, protect your remaining years. Surround yourself with people who make life lighter, not heavier. People who bring comfort instead of chaos. People who appreciate your presence rather than use your generosity. People who help you smile when the days become difficult. And most importantly, remember this: you are never too old to choose peace. You are never too old to create boundaries. You are never too old to walk away from what hurts you. And you are never too old to start living the rest of your life on your own terms. Because 80 is not the end of the story. It is simply the chapter where wisdom finally speaks the loudest. If you've stayed with me until this moment, thank you. Not because you listened to my words, but because you listened to the lessons hidden inside them. Lessons that took me 80 years to learn. 80 years of living. 80 years of loving. 80 years of making mistakes. 80 years of trusting the wrong people and losing the right ones. 80 years of discovering what truly matters. And if there is one thing I hope you remember after this video ends, it is this: life is far too short to spend it with people who steal your peace. When we are young, we rarely understand that. We think time is endless. We think there will always be another year, another opportunity, another chance to fix things, another chance to be happy. But age changes your perspective. The older you get, the more clearly you see the truth. You begin to realize that every sunrise is a gift. Every conversation matters. Every laugh becomes precious. Every day becomes something you can never get back. And suddenly, the people around you become more important than ever, because they either add joy to your life or take it away. They either help your soul grow lighter or make it heavier. They either bring peace into your home or bring stress through the front door. For most of my life, I believed being a good person meant enduring everything. I believed kindness meant saying yes. I believed loyalty meant staying, no matter how badly I was treated. I believed family should always come first. And while there is beauty in loyalty, there is danger in blind loyalty. Because some people will gladly accept your sacrifices while never appreciating them. Some people will take your kindness and mistake it for weakness. Some people will continue hurting you simply because you keep allowing them access to your heart. That is one of the hardest truths I have ever learned. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your life. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your peace. And certainly not everyone deserves unlimited access to your remaining years. When I look back now, I don't remember every paycheck I earned. I don't remember every bill I paid. I don't remember every argument I won. Those things disappeared with time. What I remember are people. The people who stood beside me when life became difficult. The people who made me laugh when I wanted to cry. The people who sat quietly next to me when words weren't enough. The people who loved me without conditions. The people who never asked me to become someone else in order to earn their respect. Those are the people who matter. Those are the people worth keeping. As we grow older, something remarkable happens. Our world becomes smaller, not necessarily because we want it to, but because life naturally changes. Friends move away. Some pass away. Children build lives of their own. Neighborhoods change. Communities change. Everything changes. And when that happens, we begin seeing relationships differently. We stop asking, how many people are in my life? And we start asking, who truly belongs in my life? There is a big difference. A very big difference, because quantity never guarantees happiness. Quality does. One loyal friend is worth more than 20 fake ones. One loving family member is worth more than a room full of critics. One honest relationship is worth more than 100 shallow connections. I learned that lesson after losing people I loved. When someone you cherish leaves this world, something inside you changes forever. You suddenly realize how precious genuine relationships truly are. You stop chasing approval. You stop wasting energy on meaningless drama. You stop worrying about impressing people who don't care, and you begin focusing on what actually matters. Peace, love, gratitude, connection, purpose. These become your treasures, and unlike money, nobody can put a price on them. I often think about the many elderly people I've met over the years. Men and women in their 80s and 90s. People who lived through wars, economic hardships, personal tragedies, unimaginable challenges. And do you know what surprised me? Very few regretted the things they failed to buy. Very few regretted not working more hours. Very few regretted not impressing enough people. Instead, their regrets sounded very different. They regretted staying in toxic relationships too long. They regretted tolerating disrespect. They regretted wasting years trying to please people who could never be pleased. They regretted sacrificing their happiness for people who never appreciated it. Again and again, I heard the same message. Protect your peace. Protect your peace. Protect your peace. It sounds simple, yet it may be one of the hardest things to do, especially if you're a caring person, especially if you've spent your life helping others, especially if you're the type of person who always puts family first, because saying no feels uncomfortable. Creating boundaries feels uncomfortable. Walking away feels uncomfortable. But do you know what feels even worse? Spending years unhappy because you were afraid to do those things. At 80 years old, I've learned that boundaries are not walls. They are doors. Doors that allow healthy people into your life while keeping harmful behavior outside. A boundary doesn't mean you hate someone. It means you respect yourself. A boundary doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're wise. A boundary doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've started caring about yourself too. And that matters, more than most people realize. You deserve relationships where respect flows both ways. You deserve conversations that leave you smiling. You deserve friendships built on trust. You deserve family connections built on love rather than guilt. You deserve to wake up in the morning feeling grateful rather than drained. You deserve peace. Every human being does, no matter their age, no matter their background, no matter their circumstances. One of the greatest lies many people believe is that it's too late to change, too late to create boundaries, too late to walk away, too late to start over, too late to choose happiness. But let me tell you something. As long as you're breathing, it is not too late. I have seen 80-year-olds start new friendships. I have seen 90-year-olds discover new purpose. I have seen elderly widows rebuild beautiful lives after devastating loss. I have seen people find joy again when they thought joy was gone forever. Life has a remarkable way of surprising us. But those surprises often begin with a decision to stop accepting what hurts us, a decision to stop carrying burdens that were never ours, a decision to stop living for everyone else, a decision to finally choose peace. And maybe that decision begins today. Maybe today is the day you stop answering every critical voice. Maybe today is the day you stop rescuing people who only take. Maybe today is the day you step away from negativity. Maybe today is the day you stop trusting someone who has repeatedly betrayed you. Maybe today is the day you release guilt that never belonged to you in the first place. Maybe today is the day you remember that your life still matters, because it does. It absolutely does. Whether you are 40, 60, 80, or 90, your life matters. Your happiness matters. Your peace matters. And your remaining years matter. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. As this message comes to an end, I want you to imagine something. Imagine yourself sitting quietly at the end of a long life, looking back, reflecting, remembering. What do you think will matter most? The people who criticized you, the people who used you, the people who manipulated you, the people who spread negativity. No, they will fade into the background. What will remain are moments. Moments of laughter, moments of love, moments of courage, moments when you chose peace over chaos, moments when you finally honored your own worth. Those moments become your legacy, and that legacy begins with the choices you make today. So choose wisely. Choose peace. Choose joy. Choose people who celebrate your existence rather than tolerate it. Choose relationships that nourish your spirit rather than drain it. Choose a life that feels lighter. Because after 80 years, I can tell you this with complete certainty. The happiest people are not those who have everything. They are the ones who finally learned what to let go of. And if you can learn that lesson now, whether you're young or old, you may discover something beautiful. The life you've been searching for was never hiding in other people. It was waiting inside the peace you finally decided to protect. And that peace, my friend, is worth everything.